on to our second topic of the day. Apple's September event has officially been announced. Now, it's been announced for Tuesday, September 12th at 10 a.m. PST or 1 p.m. EST. Now, obviously, as is the case with all of their September events, this is going to be an iPhone event. So we're going to get the iPhone 15 lineup. We're going to get probably the 15, the 15 Plus, the 15 Pro, the 15 Pro Max, and one thing that a lot of people are speculating on and talking about, and with so many people talking about it, it's almost been confirmed, but also that's just the cell phone market and rumors. We really don't know until the event happens.
Yeah.
But apparently, the dynamic island, the big feature on the Pro phones from last year, is coming to all of the iPhone 15s. Apparently, all phones are getting USB-C ports, so no portless phones, not this year. And they will be getting an updated 5G chip from Qualcomm. Now, for the Pros, there's going to be some minor redesign changes. The 15s are supposed to look essentially the same as last year, except with the dynamic island. So there's going to be a minor redesign, slimmer bezels around the screen, slight changes to the curves on the corners and edges of the phone. And also, the Pros will be changing material on the frame from stainless steel to titanium. They're also supposed to get the A17 chip. I guess the 15s are getting updated to A16, which was last year's chip, which is supposed to be the A17 is supposed to be Apple's first 3 nanometer chip ever. So there should be pretty considerable performance gains. I mean, Apple's going to come out with their crazy charts without labels and axes that just show a line going up. So be prepared to see those 20 times better than last year's or 100 times better than a Samsung phone, whatever they say. So there's supposed to be an action button on the Pros, similar to the action button on the Apple Watch Ultra, and it's going to replace the mute switch on the Pros. And the Pro Max is expected to get a periscope lens that will allow for 5x or 6x optical zoom. And 15, right now the 14 Pro Max has a 3x optical zoom. So a pretty considerable change if it does end up coming to the Pro Max. Along with these upgrades, so the A17 chip, the titanium frame, the slimmer bezels, the Pros are supposed to get a price bump. So it's supposed to start at $1099 for the 15 Pro and $1199 for the Pro Max. And apparently the regular 15 models, the price is staying the same, apparently. But, what have you heard from the Apple event, and two, what have you heard about these iPhones? Do these seem like considerable changes, with the dynamic island coming to everything, with the changes, like the USB-C port and what we seem to be, or what we're rumored to be getting with the 15 Pro devices? Do you think these are good updates, or is it just Apple pushing out the same product like they always do?
I think it's they're considerable updates for Apple. I think they're in line with, okay, we're gonna slowly add features to these phones over the years to make them a little bit more interesting. And the reason why I'm never really negative on these changes is that no one ever gets a new phone every year. Actually, that's a lie. I'm pretty sure there's someone out there who gets a new phone every year, but most people don't. So by the time someone's ready to get a new phone, these changes kind of add up to be quite useful to some people. I'll go on record as to saying I do not think the dynamic island is all that useful. I think that got a little bit more press than it deserved when it originally came out on the Pros. But the idea that could be coming to the non-Pro models, kind of cool. Anything to minimize notches and hole punches to me is a good idea. I have a phone with a hole punch, a small little hole punch in the corner for the first time ever, and I've heard so many reviewers say in the past that you lose track of it and you don't notice it. I still notice it, and it bothers me all the time. So I don't like them. I can't wait until we get to a day where we don't need those anymore. And I imagine when Apple finally does do that, they will probably have the best implementation of that. Maybe something like an under-display camera. That's better than what we see from like the Samsung Galaxy Fold. The one really interesting thing about this is, like you mentioned, the first ever 3 nanometer chip. This goes back to our previous conversation about performance. And I don't know if Apple will do this. You mentioned their unlabeled graphs. I'm sure they're going to have tons of unlabeled graphs about how this new chip is going to be so amazing. But the one thing I do hope they do is the one thing you get by going to a smaller process node is efficiency. Chips get way more efficient. And I hope that they can kind of keep performance maybe a little bit better, but not really go, full into the performance being great, but focus on battery life being amazing. Because I could imagine with the 15 Pro Max, if that's what they end up calling it, and this new 3 nanometer chip, having a big battery and this chip that can be very power efficient, I could imagine a phone that could potentially last 2 days on a charge easily. I have a phone right now that can almost last 2 days on a charge, and it doesn't have the most efficient chip. It doesn't have the biggest battery. It's a pretty small phone. So I think if Apple can get to that, I think that would be a huge upgrade for a lot of people who really want a phone that can last as long as possible. So I think that would be really cool. And then hopefully eventually carrying that process down to the Apple Watch, which I also think would be awesome. I don't think we'll see that on the 12th, but I think that would be cool in the future. And then the USB-C thing. So I've said I don't think that they were going to get USB-C, despite all the rumors pointing in that direction. I was just being defiant. Clearly, that's probably going to happen. I'm curious to see if they still keep USB-C on the base level iPhones as USB 2. That is a huge problem I have with Android phones and USB-C in general, is that there's no standard to what USB-C means. It's just a connector and people can do whatever the hell they want with it. Case in point, the Nintendo Switch, which I don't even know what to call that that protocol that they use. It's very custom. But I would be really happy to see if they put a USB 3, maybe even USB 4 port on the base level iPhones. I don't think they'll go USB 4, but if they do go USB 4 on the Pro phones, I think that would be awesome. I think that would get a lot of people really into taking really high quality raw video and photo with their phones, their Pro phones, because they can get that information on and off the phones very quickly with a Thunderbolt style port on the phone. I don't know if that happens this year, but I think that would be really cool. How do you feel about that? Do you think that the USB-C port on both the non-Pros and the Pro phones are standardized? They're the same speed? Do you think they go faster with the Pros? And if they do go faster with the Pros, do you think you get a USB 4 port on this year of the Pro, or do maybe they hold that for another year?
I think they're separate. I think you're right on that. I think that the Pros will have a faster USB-C port than the standard version. I want to say if you're going to go with a faster one, you have to give it a USB 4. What is that? Thunderbolt, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to give it a Thunderbolt. That just makes sense. And then I catch myself thinking that Apple's going to do something that makes sense. So I could see them going USB 3 on the Pros, USB 2 on the regular 15s.
Yeah.
I could see them doing that because that would be a very Apple thing to do. What makes sense to me is them going Thunderbolt on the Pros and even still USB 3 on the 15s. And then that's also a selling point for, hey, this is why we have to raise the price of the Pros, right? Titanium frame, 3 nanometer chip, periscope lens on the Max, and you're getting Thunderbolt. Like I could see that being a justification for why they're raising the price. And to be honest, if they do include Thunderbolt and all this other stuff, it's not outlandish for them to raise the price that much, in my opinion. But yeah, I do think we'd get USB-C on everything. I think also for this event, there's rumors we're getting an Apple Watch, also a Series 9, which is just going to be another iterative change. There's also supposed to be a new Apple Watch Ultra, which I don't think is going to be that different either. What's interesting though is, okay, we're on Apple Watch 9. Next year is the 10. So next year there's supposed to be a huge redesign that happens with the Apple Watch 10, much like when we got the iPhone 10. We had that huge redesign for that too. There's talks of maybe being new AirPods that come out with USB-C, with USB-C on the charging case. Maybe not happening at this event, but maybe like in a November event. But I think, yeah, definitely the main thing for September 12th, Apple Watches and iPhones.
Yeah, I think it will be a pretty good event. I think if you have an iPhone 12, 13, or 14, it probably won't be that exciting for you. But if you are coming from something like an iPhone 10, I think these phones could be really
Mhm.
enticing. Um,
Very.
and I agree with you. I do think that if they add value to with things like the Thunderbolt port, USB 4 port on the Pros, and the better materials and stuff like that, I think they can get away with raising the price. I hope that we don't see a price raise across the board. There's always the chance of Apple doing that,
Mhm.
but I don't know. It seems like maybe that they're just going to focus on the Pros for now, and maybe we'll see that in the future. Um, and the Apple Watch with the Ultra, it would be cool to maybe see some colors, maybe, because if they are going to use the same materials for the the new Pro Max phone or whatever they call it, with that material as the Watch Ultra, I'm sure they're not just going to have one color. Maybe they will. That we have talked about in the podcast in the past that maybe they do just have the one SKU for that phone, to make it like the flagship version, like the Ultra. But if they do introduce other colors, I would like to see the watch kind of match that. So maybe like a space gray version of that. I don't know if we'll ever see that. The only reason I say that is because that watch is really big, and I think a darker color might make it look a little less bulky. But that's also a huge part of the design aesthetic to that watch. So who knows? Maybe they just decide not to go that route. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's going to be an interesting event. I guess we'll cover it on the podcast afterwards. Hopefully, there's at least one surprise that we get to see. But it seems like with leakers, they're pretty aware of what Apple's doing from time to time.
They are. So for the event, my prediction, I do think maybe we get a second Apple Watch
Mm.
color, like you said, black, and I guess it's not space gray anymore. It's space black
Space black.
for their iPhones.
Interesting.
And but you brought up a good point, right? If they're going with titanium frames, they're gonna come out with multiple colors for this for the 15 Pro and Pro Max. So if they're already milling titanium frames in a certain color, it only makes sense that they would have that available for for the titanium frame on the Ultra.
Hmm.
But I still think that, part of the I don't know, the mystique of the Ultra, or part of the selling point of the Ultra, is that there's only one SKU.
Yeah.
It's not like an Apple Watch where you can get it in different colors, and you can get, the SE, and you can get, no, the Ultra is Ultra. You don't get to choose anything. Just give us your money. I think that's part of the mystique of it. And, Apple likes to find some way to differentiate from one model to the next year, right? Whether it be they change the camera alignment or they come out with a new color. So I could definitely see the new color for this Apple Watch Ultra being space black,
Mm.
and it matches your space black 15 Pro. Or maybe they come out with, I don't know, some new obsidian black or some weird color like that,
Yeah.
right? But you're right. I do think they come out with a new color so that people know that's just not the Apple Watch. It's the second generation Apple Watch Ultra
Yeah.
that you're wearing. I think they definitely do that. Okay, last question for you. Do they rebrand to the iPhone 15 Pro Max Ultra, or is it just the 15 Pro Max?
I'm always wrong with Apple stuff. So I guess if you're betting on this in like Vegas, maybe do the opposite of what I say. But I'm going to guess it stays Pro Max. I think that falls in line with Apple's naming schemes. I think calling a phone an Ultra is just too similar to Samsung. I I think they can get away with it on the watch, but if it's the phone, I don't know. It seems weird. Apple usually likes to blaze their own trail. They like to show everyone that their marketing is way better than everyone else's, and their devices are way better than everyone else's. I don't know if they want to get caught or feel like they're copying someone else. So yeah, I think it stays Pro Max. Honestly, I think calling it just the iPhone 15 Ultra is a better name than the iPhone Pro Max, because I think Pro Max is a dumb name. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. What do you think? Do you think they go Ultra? Because the more I think about it, Pro Max Ultra, I think, is too much. That's too many words. But if they just call it the iPhone 15 Ultra, I would be on board for that. Where do you think they land in this?
So hey, called it. You said one thing, I'm putting my money on the other. I'm going to Vegas. I say, and I think I mentioned this on another podcast before where I was just joking around, but I feel a little bit more serious about it now. They're going to come out with a Pro Max version. Right now, the limit is 1 terabyte. It's going to be double that. It's going to be 2 terabyte storage limit. There's only going to be one color SKU.
Mhm.
You don't get to choose a bunch of different colors. And I think they still like the Pro name. They like slapping Pro on everything. So I think it's going to be the 15 Pro Ultra, one specific color SKU that you can't get on a regular Pro or regular Pro Max. Yeah, that's my prediction.
I'm not gonna lie. I think that's a good idea. I'm just thinking of, okay, we were talking about colors earlier. If they do like colors on the Pro Max and whatever, but they just have like the raw, unpainted version on the Ultra, similar to the watch, that could be a good idea. 2 terabytes of storage would be insane, and then maybe that's where they hold the USB 4 port for. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah, maybe that's a Thunderbolt one.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, look, these events year to year can get a little bit, I don't want to say boring, but a little bit by the numbers. If they do introduce a new SKU like that, I think that would get a lot of people talking, similar to what the Apple Watch Ultra did last year. So yeah, I think that's a good way of drumming up, excitement. And then even if the lower SKUs don't get like the same kind of specs, I think there's going to be a trickle down effect where if people start talking about this Ultra phone having this super fast USB-C port, and then the other phones have USB-C, but it's not as fast, I think it still brings some excitement to the idea that USB-C is on the iPhone, especially because so much of the competition in Android is still using USB 2 for their ports. So yeah, once again, I'm usually wrong with these things, so I'll stick by what I originally said. But if that does happen, I think that's the smarter move.
Yeah.